guys, Jake with TN Tactical coming with another great video. Today we're talking about the top 5 upgrades you need to get for your Glock. Now, I've been around Glocks more than anything else. In fact, my first handgun actually was a Glock. It was a 23. But anyways, that was my first handgun. I learned a lot from having that. And ever since then, I've been coming around to getting other Glocks and trying different things over the years and seeing what works and what doesn't work. So with this top 5 video, I kind of wanted to cover things that would be a little bit safer for you to try, things that wouldn't really compromise the reliability, stuff that's practical but wouldn't affect the function of the actual firearm cycling and reloading and all that good stuff. So with that being said, let's go and get into our top 5 Glock upgrades. So number 5 is going to have to obviously be a red dot. Now there's a lot of different options out there. In the past, we've had Sealy red dots on here. We currently have a Holliston 507C ACSS reticle. Very nice. I kind of like having that little chevron in the middle with a larger ring around the outside of it to kind of help find the center of your red dot. The Sealy dot is currently on another handgun at this moment for further testing and evaluation, but in the meantime, I had this thing around on the shelf, so I thought might as well go and slap it on this for my bedside gun. Now, Glock's been notorious for their Gen 3s and Gen 4s and a lot of their Gen 5s of not having the option to mount an actual red dot. They didn't have that slide cut out. Thankfully, with this being a Gen 5 47 MOS, we do have the milling already done and a plate on there so that we can, in fact, put our red dot on there. Obviously, Holliston and Trijicon come to mind, but we've noticed a lot of good reliability with Sealy as well, which is kind of a new up-and-comer in the space. Now, number 4 is going to have to be these raised front and rear sights with tritium inside each of them. Very nice. You know, whenever you use a red dot on a handgun, especially for your everyday carry, I think it's very important to get something such as these elevated sights so that if your red dot ever goes out, you can still look through the actual window of your optic and line up your front and rear sight. So in addition, I got tritium in there because of adverse lighting conditions. You never know what kind of situation you might be in. So having something that glows like that is a good thing to have. I got these on eBay, I think for like 79 or 80 bucks. Not necessarily against getting stuff off eBay as long as it's a name brand and something I can count on. These are AmeriGlow, so I know they're going to work. Can't stress to you enough why it's so important to have the elevated front rear sights. Having that red dot mounted makes it even more important to have raised front and rear sights. Now, number 3 on our top 5 list is going to have to be to get some sort of light. In this case, we've got a Streamlight TLR1 mounted on the front rail here. There is some debate whether you should get a light that's mounted actually directly on your handgun like this, or if you should go with a handheld one like this. Some people like to have both hands on the handgun to help provide aim and accuracy. Other people prefer to do sort of like the FBI method where you go like this. You can have it out there and so on, so that way whoever is possibly shooting at you, they'll aim for the light source and not actually at yourself, your actual body. Again, there's some debate there, just like how there's debate whether you should even have a red dot on your handgun. For me, in my situation, in my case, I chose to go with this because this is, again, going to be a handgun sitting in my nightstand that I can pull out, and it's all set up, ready to go. Now, one significant downside to think about when using a flashlight in combination with a red dot is 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to end up washing out your actual reticle to where you can't even see it because of how bright the light is. Now, there's different ways to kind of mitigate that. My personal method is to simply just use my front and rear sights while looking through the optic itself and not have any issue. Another option is to go ahead and just have your red dot cranked up a whole bunch so that way it kind of can still stand out even with that bright flashlight blowing everything else out. Now, number 2 on our top 5 list is going to have to be to get extended controls. This is where you got to pay very careful attention to make sure you get OEM stuff. I highly recommend if you're using this as a bedside or everyday carry, you stick with OEM. I had a Tyrant Design slide release earlier. It was good, but for some reason, I found myself accidentally pressing up on the slide lock and causing my slide to go lock back when it wasn't supposed to yet. In this case, I went with the extended slide release. You can see that little notch right there on the side. That just gives you a little bit of an extra thing for your thumb to grab onto, reset that slide. That's why, again, I went to the Glock OEM one. Now, for the actual mag release, I went with this sort of different design. You see how it's kind of extended, but it's also in a weird angle. I actually found it to be pretty good. If there's nothing else that you listen to in this entire video, listen to this part. This is the most important thing you can probably take away from the whole video. A lot of companies will sell you different types of mag releases, some extended, some not. And that's totally up to your preference. One thing I almost learned a hard lesson on was the type of material. A lot of companies will sell you aluminum aftermarket mag releases. And you think to yourself, okay, aluminum, That's got to be good, right? Durable, it's going to last longer. You don't want that. They will actually damage your Glock magazines to the point where you can no longer use them and they just fall right out of your slot, your mag well there. So this is the spot where the mag catch actually gets in there and will hold the magazine in place. Down here, you typically see wear and tear, you know, on the bomb edge here. That's not really unusual. You can't really see it because I caught it early, but the very top edge there, that actually gets worn out by the aluminum on your mag release so much to where when you stick your mag in, it just falls right out. So that's why I'm saying, make sure you go with polymer magazine releases. I learned something, and so did you. Now, number one on my list is going to have to be to get the Glock Performance trigger. This is the first aftermarket improved trigger that Glock has made. A lot of times in my experience, whenever I get aftermarket parts, whether it be connectors or springs, really anything to kind of improve that trigger pull, it's always ended up in failure. I've always had issues with reliability and being able to function correctly, striking the primers hard enough, or cycling the rounds. There's been a lot of different problems I've experienced over the years. So for the most part, I typically will just do like the 25-cent polish job on my connectors and stuff, and that was it. This is the first time I've put an aftermarket trigger and have not had any issues. I've even done the Timney Alpha Glock trigger, which failed miserably, by the way. I know people love that trigger. It did not work out for me. This trigger, the way it's designed, is very similar to the Timney Alpha Glock trigger, where your strikers come already primed and set up back there. We're empty, by the way. On a regular Glock trigger, you pull that trigger like that, and it just stays back. But this, see, the trigger is already still squeezy and spongy. You're not hitting an actual striker or anything because it's not pulled back. But when you rack the slide, that striker is set back there. When you're pulling the trigger, it's not pulling the striker back. Because of that, it's a little bit lighter weight. It's only right here at the very end that you actually hit the striker and pull it. It's about 100 bucks, and honestly, of all the different aftermarket trigger options out there, this is my go-to now. Anytime I put an aftermarket trigger, it's going to be this. The downside is you can only put this trigger in a Gen 5 Glock. It does not work with Gen 4s, it does not work with Gen 3s. These triggers will not work in 43s or 43Xs. So yeah, honestly, if you're gonna get an aftermarket trigger, you can get this one and it should be reliable for you. If you're not gonna get this one, then don't swap it out at all, because again, we're trying to use this for everyday carry in our bedside. We do not wanna mess up our reliability. So guys, this is gonna wrap it up for my top 5 upgrades for the Glock. Now, granted, there's a lot of other videos out there like this. I know you guys are gonna argue in the comments probably of different things you would recommend instead of some of these things. And that's okay. It's all part of the process, right? Of figuring out what works best for you. This is what works best for me. It may not be the same thing as what works best for you, but that's okay too. Guys, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Remember, if you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to like, subscribe, comment down below. Have you picked up a Glock before and gone through a few upgrades? I'd love to hear from you. We will see you next time. Special video today. We're your Glock. Test, 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 test.